Next up, we have the current appointed councilor of Ward 2. Anthony, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because I don't want to mispronounce your name, and I apologize for that.
That sounds good. Thank you, Colin, and thank you to the QDCC for hosting us tonight. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity. As Colin sort of mentioned, my name is Anthony Andronico, and for the past 4 years, I've had the privilege of serving you in my hometown and local office as a school committee member, as vice chair of the school committee, and for the past year as your Ward 2 councilor. And although the roles have changed, my goals always remained the same: provide a high level of constituent services, prioritize community input in decision-making, and advocate for policies that provide benefits to those who have already invested their hard-earned tax dollars into Quincy. And when I was sworn in as the ward councilor in January, I got right to work and launched a constituent services website, anthonyandronico.com, to provide a new avenue to connect during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. And the website served as a central location where residents could sign up for an e-newsletter to stay informed, request assistance with an issue, and fill out a survey to provide feedback on the issues. And after hearing from folks through that survey, through emails and phone calls, I took that feedback and got right to work at City Hall. And just a few of the things that we've accomplished together in our short time together is we've pushed for and passed an infrastructure plan that'll lead to over 33,000 feet of roadway to be repaved in Ward 2 over the next decade. We called for public input into how $46.3 million worth of federal relief funds should be spent by the administration, and for a full accounting of where any of that funding has already been spent. We authored a resolution demanding the immediate shutdown of the Weymouth compressor station. We partnered with the mayor's office and the state to address COVID-19 vaccine supply chain issues to make sure our seniors at our senior buildings got a mobile vaccination clinic. And I think most importantly, we've asked the tough questions at City Hall and opposed spending proposals when they didn't make sense for the city itself. So thank you for allowing me the time for an opening statement, and I'm looking forward to the discussion tonight.
Thank you, Councilor. The first question is, many candidates stress the importance of improved communication and how they will have greater transparency. Please give one specific example of something that would improve communication and transparency.
Thanks, Colin. And I may have answered this in the opener there, but right away after being sworn in, I launched a constituent services website, and the feedback that I was able to get initially through the website and mainly through a survey that I offered on there about what are the issues that you want to see be addressed? What do you think are some of the challenges that we have as a city moving forward? Where do you want me to put my emphasis? Has really served us well as a launch pad over the last year to actually get things done. And in addition to, just the website, we've got a monthly e-newsletter that I've sent out on the last day of every single month so that people can stay up to date about what's actually happening in the city and, more importantly, in the ward, with things that you might not necessarily find in your local paper. So I think that that's been something that I've been proud to implement, and I'd love to keep the momentum going into the next term.
Very good. The second question concerns zoning. If you could change one thing in our zoning code, what would it be and why?
Thank you. So I think most recently what we've seen over the last decade is a developer will come in, in particular in the downtown, and just build a very large building up to 15 stories for now. I know some might want to make it 20, but I think 15 is good for right now. But it's just completely paved over. There's absolutely no green space in any of this building. And that's, not just in the downtown, but as it's, pushed more and more into our neighborhoods, you don't need to pave over every single inch of land that we have. I know the city took steps alongside Councilor Phelan to purchase the Beachcomber land when it was proposed that that land would be paved over entirely as well. But specific to an ordinance or zoning, it's encouraging more green space and putting in more requirements to actually encourage the use of green space within planning.
Very good. Our next question concerns critical race theory. In your own words, can you define critical race theory as it relates to civic planning or social structures in our city? And the follow-up, do you think that Quincy can benefit from this type of thinking? Why or why not?
So I know we've talked about critical race theory, certainly, when I'm at the doors, occasionally someone will ask me about it, and we became more well acquainted with that type of definition and diversity, equity, and inclusion work during my time on the school committee. But generally speaking, critical race theory is typically a college level course that would examine, why laws are the way they are, stemming from slavery to Jim Crow up to now, especially when we talk about zoning and things like redlining, right? There are plenty of books that are about that. So, but one of the things I was proud to do during my time as vice chair of the school committee was I put forward the ordinance that established the diversity, equity, and inclusion subcommittee so that we would have a permanent place to actually talk about these issues. And it's not to say that you have to implement every idea under the sun. It's a place where, an understanding that these issues need to be talked about. I do appreciate the feedback we got from the beginning where we were we were brought forward a petition from a couple teachers that had 5 ideas about how could Quincy do a better job when it comes to these issues, and we were able to implement all 5. And I think that we've made some great progress. And I know the mayor has a commission to further explore those issues citywide. And I don't think you should ever be concerned or afraid to have a conversation. Folks might not always agree, but local government and government in general is about bringing folks to the table, hearing out opposing viewpoints and sides, and coming together to figure out what you can do.
Very good. Our next question concerns the budget. As a city councilor, you will have to make some tough budgetary decisions. So how do you define the priorities on next year's budget? And the follow-up, how do you intend to balance the needs of the taxpayers against the plans for city growth?
Sure. So just in general, every year, there are a couple things that the city budget needs to keep up with in general. There are contractual obligations in terms of pay increases that we need to meet for city workers. There are healthcare costs that we need to keep up with as well. So I know we keep saying the budget goes up and up and up every year. Well, in addition to just general spending items and bonds that the city council passes, those are costs that we'll have to meet regardless. So typically what's been happening is the growth that we've seen has been able to keep up with that. But at the same time, the average property tax bill in Quincy over the last 10 years has gone up, I think it's $1,754. So sure, your tax rate may have decreased, but the real dollar amount that you're paying every year has gone up, and a lot of folks have felt the squeeze. So that means as a city councilor, you can't always say yes. So what I like to see, one of the things I'd like to implement is a residential property tax exemption and phase it in over 10 years, which would allow owner-occupied homes to see an up to 35% reduction in the property tax. And I just want to give a quick shout out to Councilor Palmucci and Liang, who proposed that in 2019.
Very good, thank you. Our next question concerns unions. So our community supports our city workers, all workers really, in their right to bargain collectively. How did you support labor and rights and the right to collective bargain for wages and benefits in your campaign?
Sure. So just very briefly, I'm very proud to have earned the endorsement of the Norfolk County Labor Council, IBEW Local 103, Plumbers Local 12, Ironworkers Local 7, Carpenters Local 346, and a few more that I apologize to, but I only got so much time. But just in talking with them over the last couple of years, in my role as a school committee member, and even as in my role as communications director in the state Senate, I've really seen firsthand the impact that being able to earn a livable wage can make on a Quincy family in particular. The cost of housing keeps going up, your groceries keep going up, gas keeps going up. And when you talk about the opportunities that families have to make ends meet, unions are a very large part of that. So, I really do appreciate everything that our unions have done to give back as well, especially over the last year. I know the Norfolk County Labor Council has hosted many food drives with the United Way and the work that they do. And I'm really proud to have an open line of communication with them. And I appreciate the support that they've lent me thus far.
Thank you. Our next question. Most years bring at least a few controversial issues before the council. How will you balance listening to the concerns of all of your constituents, yet knowing that you will have to make a decision that may and should not please everyone?
Yeah, so I was introduced to the concept of controversial issues almost immediately upon being appointed as the Ward 2 councilor. We were talking about, an investment of over $100 million into a public safety complex. We're talking about acquiring land for a new Quincy College building and eventually, actually building a Quincy College building. We were talking about a pension bond obligation. I learned pretty quickly that you're not always going to be able to please everyone. Sometimes you need to make a hard call. But I really appreciated everyone that had reached out about those issues, gave me their perspective, was level-headed, had a conversation about it. And with some of those issues that I just mentioned, I was in favor of some and I was opposed to others. And sometimes you're just going to fall on one side or the other. It's just important that people understand and your constituents understand what's your actual reasoning for why you voted the way you did. And just going back to the newsletter, that's why in my newsletter, I talk about these issues. I actually explain why I voted the way I did. I think it's important to have that open communications and transparency style. And, I'm not always going to agree with my constituents and they're not always going to agree with me. But I think as long as you have an understanding that you're working together in the overall best interest of the city, that you can get things done.
Very good, Councilor. We only have one final question. You've done a good job blowing through these. So we will end with, before your closing statement, what inspired you to run and serve?
Sure. So I guess I'll have to go back 4 years ago. So you'll have to excuse me as I just recall being 23 and trying to figure out kind of what I wanted to do. At the time I was working for a company up in Cambridge, and I'll leave their name out, but, I really wasn't fulfilled professionally about, the work that I was doing. And, I grew up in Quincy. I'm a proud lifelong resident. I'm proud to be a fourth generation Quincy, Quincy lifer. And I just thought that I had something to give back at the time on the school committee. There weren't a lot of young voices in city government. And effectively, I thought, why not me? I've got a couple ideas. I wanted to expand current technical education programs because, while Quincy did a great job, I think we could do even better. Just thinking back to my time in Quincy public schools, having graduated with a lot of student debt after college. And I thought that perspective was needed at the time. And after that, I ended up getting a job in the state Senate and giving back another way. And I've been very, very fulfilled in my professional career, both, on the city side, the local side, and on the state side. And I just really love the work that I do and giving back and working with my neighbors, getting to meet so many interesting folks. So that's a roundabout way of saying I just love what I do and I'd love to continue doing it.
Thank you, Councilor. I know you probably just gave a little bit of that speech now, but if you'd like to make your closing statement, that would be terrific.
Thank you very much, Colin. And thanks again to the QDCC for hosting us. We don't get to do this too often, but I hope people know that I always have an open door policy, or I guess, a virtual open door policy for the time being. And I'm always around to answer any questions. But when I think about some of the challenges that we'll face together over the next few years, keeping Quincy affordable, ensuring Ward 2 gets its fair share of funding for roads, parks, and city services, and bringing public input to spending and development. And I think it's important to have someone who knows how to bring people together and get things done on the local level. And that's exactly what I've done throughout my career in public service, whether it's on the school committee, as a communications director in the state Senate, or as a ward councilor. And it's that experience that's led me to have earned the endorsement of, again, the Norfolk County Labor Council, IBEW Local 103, Bricklayers Local 3, Ironworkers Local 7, Carpenters Local 346, Plumbers Local 12, and Laborers Local 133. And just overall, my approach to government is very simple. I believe everyone should have a seat at the table, that each constituent concerned deserves the same level of urgency, and there's always more that we can do to improve our neighborhoods. I think we're just getting started, and if we continue to work together and fight for Quincy families, then we can make Ward 2 and the city of Quincy a better place to live, work, and raise a family. With that, I humbly ask for your vote on Tuesday, November 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Andronico.